Good afternoon. Welcome to a special edition at the Cherokee studio today. We have with us a very special guest, and we're very honored and pleased that we could have somebody very important who represents us here in Minnesota. And Ms. Becker is the person who's brought this special guest for us, and I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Becker to introduce our guest.
Thank you, Mr. Kainlake. It's my honor to bring to Cherokee Heights, or to introduce to you today, Senator Roger Moe. Senator Moe is the Senate Majority Leader for the state of Minnesota. He is a representative here for the state government, working in St. Paul. He's from northern Minnesota, where I'm also from. So we'd like to open the floor here to Senator Moe, and then some questions after his remarks will be from the sixth graders on the floor. Senator Moe.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to have the opportunity to spend some time with you this afternoon and to talk a little bit about what I do. And I want, of course, to try to answer your questions as well. But let me first of all say that even though you can't vote, and I thought maybe we should talk a little bit about the election, since you know that there's an election on now. Hold that process. A campaign is on, and the election will be held on November 3rd. But even though you personally can't vote, you have control over some votes. And the control that you have on a couple of votes happen to be your parents. And so I would guess that if you sat down and talked with them about the candidates, and you might be able to influence them one way or the other as to which candidate to vote for. So you might think about that as you study and follow this election year and the process. As your instructor indicated, I'm a state senator. I've been a state senator for, this is my 22nd year. So I've been a senator longer than all of you have been alive by a long way. And so I have had a lot to do with public education in this state, and a lot to do with this school and all of the other schools. As a matter of fact, the most important business that your state government is engaged in is your education. That's where most of the tax dollars are spent. It's where we spend most of our time, and believe me, it's the best investment that we could make with your tax dollars and your parents' tax dollars, is to invest in your future. Make sure that you get a good education, well-trained, skilled, so that someday you get a good job and make good wages and pay taxes so that the next generation has good schools as well. My responsibility as the leader of the Senate really is twofold. One is to make sure that all of the members of the Senate play a part in the deliberation of the issues that we have before us. And those issues are pretty much put together to a certain degree throughout a campaign. Because during campaigns you talk about different issues. You talk about environmental issues and keeping our air and our water clean. You talk about health care and costs of health care and having people have an opportunity to have insurance. We talk about education and transportation systems and all of the rest. And through that process, we set an agenda. And so my responsibility as the leader is to make sure that that agenda is worked through. We get people to participate. We have the public participate. Oftentimes, we even have school students like you come and testify before committees on behalf or maybe against some proposals that we have in the legislature. And I also have to tell you my party affiliation. I'm a Democrat, just so that you know that. And so I lead all of the Democratic Farmer Labor members of the Senate as a partisan leader as well. So that's pretty much it, very briefly. I think now, why don't we move to the questions that you have, and I'll see if I can respond to them. I hope they're not too tough. Well, let's start right in front here with you, okay?
Why hasn't there been a woman or a black person elected to be president?
why hasn't maybe it would help if I repeat the question for everybody, okay? The question is, why has there not been a woman or a black person elected president thus far in the history of the United States? Well, to a certain degree, because the process shut out both women and black people. It wasn't until 1920-something. Anybody know when women got the right to vote? 1929, was it? Thereabouts? 21? 1921. Women couldn't even vote before 1921. So that's one reason that you didn't have women involved at that time. And it wasn't until the early 60s that we made changes in the Voting Rights Act and Civil Rights Movement so that black people in this country had a chance to vote and participate. And so I think those two factors are certainly among a number of other factors, of course, as to why we've neither elected a black person nor a woman to the presidency of the United States. But let me just say this, that all of you will see that happen. All of you will see that in the not-too-distant future. We will see people of color as well as women elected to the highest office in this land. Oh, I'm sorry, I did this right. You got to get...
Why doesn't the state do more to help the homeless?
Okay, the question about the state doing more to help the homeless. Well, first of all, I should tell you probably what we do. We have put in place a number of housing programs, what we refer to as transitional housing, and we help fund some of the costs associated with transitional housing. There are some kind of meals programs and the like, but I'd have to say that there's probably as much donated by individuals and the private sector as there is government involvement. Many of the food shelves and the hot meals programs like that are really, there may be some limited government involvement in them, but a lot of the resources behind them come from private individuals. The churches, for instance, get involved. Why don't we do more? Probably not. There's probably not a good reason why we don't do more. As you know, the budget, we face a lot of different issues that we have to make decisions on, and we certainly try to accommodate the number of homeless. The tragedy is that over the decade of the 80s and into the 90s, the number of homeless has increased, and unfortunately the need for food shelves have increased because of the economic situation we find ourselves in this country. The best way to solve it is to make sure that people have jobs, have an education, work, make a living so that they can afford to have their own place and to have a decent standard of living. That's the ideal. I hope someday we get to that point in this country.
How much money do senators from Minnesota make in a year?
Okay. The question is, how much money do senators from Minnesota make in a year? I think the base pay is about I don't know exactly how much it is, to be perfectly honest. I think it's about $27,000. I make more. The leadership gets paid more than that. I make the base pay of whatever that is, 27,000 something, plus 40% more than that. And that's the base salary. All of the members of the House and all of the members of the Senate get the same salary. And you get the same salary whether you've been there 1 year or 22 years.
How did you get your job?
How did I get my job as a state senator? Well, 22 years ago, right now, I was involved in a campaign, and I asked the voters of that part of Minnesota, which included the Crookston, the community where your teacher comes from and where I grew up, as well as a lot of other smaller communities. I asked them if they would vote for me to be their elected senator to serve in the state senate, and they took a chance on me, and I won the election, and I've been there ever since. But basically, I sought the position and ran in a campaign just like all of the other candidates do as well. Go in the back then.
What did you do before you were a senator?
Before I was a senator, I had the toughest job in the world. I was a teacher. I used to teach students just like you, only 1 year older. I used to be a 7th grade mathematics teacher and I taught sophomore geometry and 7th grade mathematics in a small rural community, the community of Ada. Hey, we better get over on that side of the room so we give some balance to all of this, okay? So one of those over there you can ask. Go ahead.
What is the difference between a Democrat and a Republican?
What's the difference between a Democrat and a Republican? Well, I'll spare you my partisan shot on that. Let me see if I can give you kind of a generalized difference. Let me just say there's probably, it would depend upon where you are in the country as well. Don't ever make the assumption that all Democrats think alike and all Republicans think alike. That's not true at all. Not even here in this state. If you took all the Democrats and put them in a room together, there would be a lot of fights, let me assure you. They're called conventions. And the same thing is the case with Republicans. But if I were to kind of generally summarize it, I tend to think that if there's one maybe philosophic difference that we have, it's that if society is faced with a particular issue, a problem, Democrats would perhaps look upon government as a possible solution, as a possible avenue or a way to deal with that problem or to correct the injustice or the problem that we have before us. Where maybe Republicans would tend to maybe not put government as high on the list. They would probably think that maybe the private sector could remedy that problem, or just personal initiative should be enough to correct an injustice. So that's just kind of a general difference that I've detected over the years. Certainly there are other differences. Perhaps a more accurate reflection of legislators' philosophy may have to do with, on a scale of from real conservative to very liberal, without using the labels of Democrat and Republican, we tend to fall somewhere in between there. And there could be some Republicans that end up marginally liberal, and there certainly are a lot of Democrats who are certainly conservative. So it's very good. That's a tough question to answer, but I hope I give you at least one basic difference that I've detected in them.
What did you want? Why did you want to be a senator?
Why did I want to be a senator? Well, I wanted to be a senator because there are a couple of reasons. First of all, you have to kind of reflect back on that time, and I realize it's a little bit difficult to reflect back to the late 1960s if you you weren't there. But when you read about that time, as you get a little older and you watch some of the documentaries about that time, you'll find out that a lot of people of my age got very actively involved and excited and involved in government for a couple of reasons. We had a very young president back that was elected in 1962 by the name of John Kennedy. And John Kennedy helped kind of change the complexion of politics in this country, and he excited a lot of young people to get involved in the process. He was tragically killed, assassinated, as you perhaps have read. And then the country, it went into a period of unrest. We had a very stressful war, the war in Vietnam. Perhaps some of your parents might have even served in that war. It was a very controversial war, and that also got a lot of people involved in the government process. I guess it's a composite of things like that, plus the fact that I knew that that was a place where you could make changes. The legislature writes the laws of the state, and I knew if you were involved in that, you could make changes, hopefully for the better of our state and of our society.